Now that could either buy me 22,000 rock stars or to get myself a 4-year education here at Winona State. Now I might be an extreme example, but we all pay way too much for our education. After all, more than half of you agree with me according to my survey. It's a problem that impacts all of us simply because we are here and we need to pay for being here. Tuition costs are too high, and we all need to find ways to deal with that and allow ourselves to not be in debt when we graduate from college. Now today I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why tuition is as high as it is. I'm going to give you a couple of ways that can help you minimize that financial burden on yourself. And most importantly, I'll give you a solution that is very close to my heart and that can solve the problem once and for all. So let's get to the meat of the problem. Tuition is simply too high. We all pay about $4,500 of tuition costs per semester. Now that includes laptop fees, other fees such as wellness and athletic fees, and also tuition for classes. But that's not all. The university website actually expects us all to pay more than $20,000 for a freshman year. They have a whole list of what they think we're all going to spend in our freshman year. Obviously tuition, as I just mentioned, but also room and board, the meal plan, other expenses, living expenses, and most importantly also the books that we always have to pay that we all hate paying so much for. So the university expects us to spend about $20,000 just for our freshman year. Now, how do we do that? Well, it's a combination of multiple things. We all have, parents that help us out. We might even have a job or rely on scholarships, but most importantly, it is student loans. More than half of us in here rely heavily on paying for college through student loans. Actually, the New York Times recently published an article saying that the average college graduate in 2012 will owe his bank up to $24,000 on average just for student loans. And if you add all the student loan debt up, that actually exceeds credit card debt in America right now. I personally, as I mentioned earlier, will owe my bank $64,000 in 3 years when I graduate. $64,000. If you break that down, that is $68 per day. $68 per day that I owe. Now, I believe that that is not okay. But before we can change anything about that, we need to understand the reasons behind that problem. I believe that the biggest problem is the university itself. They can make the prices. After all, the rate of tuition increases 2 times faster than inflation. I recently saw an article on CNN.com by Jack Cafferty that stated over the past 20 years, tuition costs at public universities has increased by 130%. Now if you compare that with a different number, also from the same article, that says that the average American family actually makes $400 less than 20 years ago, that is just mind-boggling to me. So I ask you, how much does it really cost to run a university? Is it that expensive? In my opinion, it is a systemic problem. They can charge whatever they want because they know that we as students need to get a good education to get a good job. So whatever they charge us, we got to come up with it somehow. And it's mostly student loans. Now, I see a big lack of common sense here. Where is our appreciation for money? We can't just spend money that we don't have and live beyond our means. How are we going to do that? That just does not make any sense. Now, there are a couple of solutions to that big financial burden. First of all, we can all get jobs. Simple. But actually, my survey told me that only 3 of us in here that answered to my survey have actual part-time or full-time jobs on the side. Further, we can all get scholarships. There are a bunch of opportunities out there for us to get scholarships, but I believe that we don't take those as seriously as we should. I mean, it takes a lot of time to apply. You need references, you need essays you got to write. And my department, the rec tourism department, actually sent out an email not too long ago saying that only 2 people applied for a scholarship for $1,000. Only 2 people cared enough to do that. Now, the third thing we can do besides, getting a job or applying for scholarships is actually change the entire system. We can lower tuition costs and solve the problem once and for all. But how do you do that? Well, let me share with something that is pretty close to my heart. Coming from Germany, I know quite a bit about the German education system. And believe it or not, German public universities, just as Winona State, just in a different country, they actually cost $0. It's completely free. Going to public school back home in Germany costs you nothing. Now, up until recently, the universities charge about $500 per semester. Yes, I said $500 per semester. But the students actually thought that that was too much. They didn't want to pay for $500. They thought it was way too much for them. So they went out in the streets and protested against that. They didn't like that. So the universities changed their system and said, all right, if you don't want to pay that much, we can do it for free. So now the only thing students pay is a general fee of about $300 per year. And that fee includes library costs, administrative costs, and even a yearly train and bus ticket to get to and from the university. So now all they pay for an entire year of school is $300. And just for comparison, I thought it was pretty interesting. To get into the average German university, your ACT score needs to be 28. To get into Winona, only 21. Another thing, the so-called German Ivy League schools, the top private schools, They cost about $1,500 per semester. Just to compare that with an Ivy school in America that I know about, University of Pennsylvania, that costs $25,000. So about 15 times as much. And the education can't be that much better over here. Now you might ask yourself, how can the system be financed? Free education sounds good and all, but where does the money come from? Well, it is pretty much all paid for by the government. The students have to pay nothing, as I just mentioned, and the money comes exclusively from tax money. Furthermore, that is not all. The government actually helps the students. It allows the students to get up to $800 per semester of help if they apply for it. And that money is given interest-free, so when you pay it back, you don't even need to pay interest on it. That is all taken care of by the state. As a matter of fact, you only need to pay it back once you get a job that pays you more than $40,000. So until then, the first couple of years after college, don't even need to worry about student loans. Don't even need to pay it back. You only do that when you get a good paying job. Now, how do we do that? How do we get to a system of less tuition over here? It is actually pretty simple. You might not like it, and I know it's very unpopular, but we have to raise taxes, and I want you to become advocates for raising taxes. I know it's unpopular, and your parents are probably going to hate raising taxes, but just think about this. What sounds better, raising taxes by a little bit, or being in debt for the next 20 years? What would you rather do? Now, just for comparison, the taxes in Germany are on average about 10% higher than they are here. That counts for corporate tax, individual tax, all kinds of weird taxes they have, but most importantly for sales tax. You all know sales tax. It all impacts all of you. Sales tax in Germany, for example, is at 19%. Sales tax over here, just at about 10%. So I believe if we increase sales tax by just a little bit, we will have enough money in the government over here that they can put towards education and help you finance your own education. So, what I need you to do now is actually pretty simple. I just want you to be more aware of what you actually pay for college. According to my survey, about half of you don't even know how much you pay. You don't even have the interest to care enough to know what your parents or whoever else pays for you pay. So I want you to become a more informed customer. Further, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for or what to do in the next election. I just want you to become more informed and more politically engaged. Now, I've got this right here. This is a good old $5 bill. This is exactly what I spent on my education since I woke up this morning. I took a shower, got dressed, walked to class, did my speech right now, and I already spent this much on my education. Does that seem reasonable to you? It doesn't to me. Now, we don't need to do fancy math or break out the big numbers to realize that education is simply way too expensive. We don't realize that. You all pay a boatload of money just to be here. And we can't change that in one day. We can't just change the entire system. But what we can change is our attitude towards politics and our attitude towards what's going on around us. I want you to become more aware of your surroundings, and the fact that the system is not good for us, doesn't mean it can't be changed. We can change an entire system if we want to and put the effort forward. Now, I want you to become more aware of your own finances, but more importantly, I want you to go out and seek out for a party or a person that represents you and that can help you be debt-free in the future.